discussed in what is the second iteration of our forum on this topic, a matter that I don't think it can be gainsaid has become the most important topic of public policy that I certainly have seen since the 1970s. 2 weeks ago, we had an earthquake, and I am not talking about the 6.9 on the Richter scale. I'm talking about the decision announced by the government to close the Petrotrin refinery. Since then, what has emerged is a national debate on the issue of national proportions, a debate that is taking place not only on the pages of the press and television and radio and social media, but on fora all over the country like this, and in little groups all over the country. And it is, for my part, the first time I have seen in a long while the country energized as it has been on a subject of national importance. So that is all to the good, and the Institute has played its part, the Lloyd Best Institute has played its part in developing and encouraging that national debate. For some people, the decision may be irrevocable, but we understand, those of us who understand politics, that there is nothing irrevocable except death. And therefore, it is imperative that the debate be allowed to continue so that the country can come to understand fully the ramifications and implications that arise from any decision taken thereon. We have for you a very star-studded panel, if I might use that term, and I want to start by bringing to the microphone Mr. Sherwin Long. He is the secretary. He belongs to the Secretariat of the Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industries Transparency Institute, and I would ask him to come to the microphone now. Each of our speakers will have 15 minutes, and we'll have all the presentations one after the other, and then we have questions and answers. Thank you very much, Mr. Sherwin Long.
Good morning, all protocols observed. It's a pleasure to be here to address you at this public forum hosted by the Lloyd Best Institute. Today, as the headline says, I'm here to provide some context on Petrotrin, highlighting the company's performance, its production, and its payment to government, among other details. I have a presentation, so I'll just bring the laptop to the stage. Okay, I mentioned earlier, I'm here to just set the context, give you a profile of Petrotrin, highlight some of the financial and operational performance of the company, its contribution to the economy, and just a few considerations for us to take away. Firstly, what we do at the TTEITI in a nutshell is promote transparency and accountability and proper management of the natural resources of the country, whether it relates to oil, gas, or mining, right? The resources belong to the citizens, Therefore, you would have a role in determining how it's put to use, etc. The objective of the EITI is really to improve how a country governs its oil, gas, and mining resources. The basic premise is that we hold these resources in trust for a future generation. So how we manage the resources are key to not only today, but also to the future. The work that we do at the EITI, we focus on the 3 R's. The first R is reconciliation. So what we look at is there's an independent auditor that looks at what companies, oil and gas companies or mining companies, pay to the government. So these companies would have to fill out information on their taxes, other statutory obligations. And then the auditor will compare what the company says to what the government actually receives. So for instance, if Petrotrin says it pays the government $10 and the government records that it received $9, our auditor will find a $1 difference and explain the reason for that difference, whether it's foreign exchange fluctuations, whether it's timing differences. What I can say importantly is that there's been no evidence of missing money. So that reconciliation provides some sort of independent verification of what we actually receive from our oil and gas resources in terms of revenue. The second R focuses on reform. So look at the EITI as a health check. How well are you collecting your taxes? How is your audit done? Are your audits done on time? What is the process for your audits? This all plays a role in terms of how much more you can collect from your resources. So it's actually about increasing revenue collection, doing a health check on your systems to see how you manage your data, how do you manage your tax collection systems, etc. So you may ask, how does Petrotrin fit into this? Again, we'll just give some historical context. As you can see, the company has gone through many different changes over the past century, starting through UBTT, UBOT, TLL, morphing all the way to its current incarnation in 93, where Trintok and Trintopec were merged. In 2000, the Trinma acreage, one of the company's most valuable assets, was acquired by the company. So the operations of Petrotrin. The Petrotrin will explore for and produce oil. It also refines and markets the products. So basically, the oil will be converted into refined products, whether it's your LPG for your gas tanks, whether it's your gas for your cars. And then the company also markets these products throughout the region. So on the exploration and production side, it's important to know that Petrotrin is the largest producer of oil in Trinidad and Tobago. You could see from this slide here that the company produces 57% of oil of the country's oil, followed by Perenco and BP and other multinationals. Also, in terms of the refinery, the operations, as I mentioned before, the refinery produces products that we all use, whether it's aviation fuel for Caribbean airline planes, whether it's LPG for the gas that we use for cooking, for driving, etc. Petrotrin also earns significant revenues from its marketing operations. So for instance, I just want to mention here that this information here shows how much the sales that Petrotrin, the amount of money Petrotrin receives from its sales. You can see in 2016, for instance, the company received just over 500 million US. I just want to put an asterisk here that this is information, this type of information is not in the public domain. This information came from Trafigura. This is a company it's a trading company, so all over the world they will actually trade in oil, minerals, diamonds, etc. So this information here comes from Trafigura's report. So this doesn't account for entire sales from the refinery, only what Trafigura purchases. And you can see it's a significant sum throughout the years, and it has actually increased between 2014 and 2016 from 80 million US to 500 million US. So I say all of these things now to set the context in terms of looking at the company's financial and operational performance. We know what type of business the company is in. We know some of the revenue that the company pays to the government. But when you look at the company's performance, right? The company, you can see there, if you look at the first arrow, the company's gross profit, when you deduct, of course, the revenue from the cost of sales, the company there's a gross profit. That figure in 2017 was actually the highest over the past 3 to 4 years. But you may ask yourself, okay, despite this, why are we having an operating loss, which is the last line? And for the 3 years that we're reporting on, 2015 to 17, there's an operational loss. Look at the administrative expenses, and that tells part of the story as well in terms of why the company has been operating at a loss. When you look at the operational expenses, wages and salaries is one component of the operational expenses, as well as crude oil purchases. So some of the news that you've been seeing throughout the media would have been a bit skewed in terms of reporting only on the wages and salaries. But if we really look at the crude oil purchases here, we actually see that the crude oil purchases, which goes back into the refinery, accounts for a significant portion of the operational expenditure. So, other news that is in the public domain focuses on debt, right? So when there's a perception that Petrotrin uses the debt is linked to the operational expenditure alone. But if you look at the real issues, you will see, for instance, that the debt is linked to the ultra-low sulfur diesel plant. This will lower the sulfur content in diesel so that it meets international standards. So you can see in terms of that US $750 million, that is where one portion of the large debt burden lies. The other portion of the debt burden, which is the payment due next year, is linked to the refinery optimization, right? So we just want to put that out there in terms of understanding where the debt really lies, what accounts for the debt. So, Petrotrin's refinery. The refinery doesn't operate at its full capacity. That is clear from the data, all the way from 2014 up to 2018. You can see, for instance, in 2014, 38% of the refinery's capacity was unused. Again, that is linked to the efficiency of how you manage your business. But refinery utilization did increase in 2016. But then it averaged between 20% in 2017 and for the first 6 months of this year. So of course, in going back to 2016, this was due to higher throughput. Throughput, explained simply, is what you put through the refinery. Basically, you will use oil, crude oil, and then the throughput is basically linked to the products that this barrel of oil produces. If you look at the refinery throughput and you compare it to the crude oil imports, you can see clearly it's a disproportionate percent in terms of what we import for the refinery versus how the throughput, in terms of how we use a barrel to produce these other refined products. In terms of contribution to the economy, the EITI will focus on taxes, royalties, and other statutory obligations. So our reports run from fiscal 2010 to 2016. You can see the top part of the chart highlights how much Petrotrin would have paid in, as I said before, taxes, royalties, and other statutory obligations. It peaked in 2014 to 6.7 billion, and the latest information that we have for 2016 shows that it declined to $123 million. Again, the reasons for this decline is linked to production as well as the price of the commodities produced, the oil produced. Petrotrin, we also cover social expenditure and social investment. So you would see Petrotrin over the five years of the report, Petrotrin contributed around $65 million on social projects, whether that is funding steel orchestras, whether that is linked to sport, whether that is linked to training. The highest, again, the contribution peaked in 2014 at 16 million, and for 2016 it declined to 11 million. Now you have to ask yourself, what are the implications if the refinery is closed on this type of expenditure for the social side? The upstream contributions, of course, will be tied to the new dispensation. I put quote unquote of the company to focus on upstream. Also, I want to make the point that Petrotrin is the only supplier of refined products to the local market. So you can see some of basically it's steady at around $10 billion, 10 billion barrels in refined products to the local market. And again, this has ramifications for the drivers, for people who cook and so on, as we all do. So some of the considerations, just final considerations for us to look at, is what will be the public fallout? How would this impact on the average citizen in terms of your cost of living, whether it's the price that you pay for gas at the pump, whether it's the LPG of your cooking gas, etc. Will the new upstream company need partners to develop its acreage? I know some of these questions I'm throwing out here will be answered by members of the panel, but it's something for all of us to consider, seeing that the company has been in oil production for the last 100 years. We know some of the issues in terms of the infrastructure upgrades as needed, and so on, some of the investment needed for the upstream, and the cost of it runs into the billions. What will be the social fallout from the refinery closure? Again, that's a serious issue that we all have to take into consideration. And you may ask yourself, okay, the EITI provides independent information and data on Petrotrin. Or will we still focus on Petrotrin in its new dispensation, quote unquote? I have to say that the answer is yes, a resounding yes. Petrotrin has agreed to continue reporting its data to us, and our independent auditor will still have a view of their payments to the government, and it will be really important, especially now if the company only focuses on upstream in terms of what is its contribution to government's tax revenue. Just to make a final point as well, the Petrotrin sits on the board of the EITI. The EITI is governed by government, companies, as well as civil society groups. So Petrotrin sits on the board of the EITI, the OWTU sits on the board of the EITI, as well as the Ministry of Energy. So we have a role to play in promoting that tripartite dialogue. I mean, the EITI, we met 96 times. We've never had to vote on an issue. You may wonder how we managed to do that. I think it's because we work in good faith, and there is an understanding that, listen, among all the players around the table, that we really hold these resources in trust for a future generation. So being mature about how we implement the EITI and how we promote transparency is really key. And with those short words, I just wanted to reiterate that the EITI will have a role to play in monitoring the revenue that we earn from the quote-unquote new dispensation. And we also want you to give us as much feedback in terms of what you'd want to see in our reports as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherwin. Brothers and sisters, let me apologize. I was told that I was being rude when I started by not having introduced myself. My name is Michael Harris, and that is all that I need to say, perhaps. Our next speaker on the panel is Gregory Mc Guire, an energy economist, and he will be speaking on the topic, the refinery closure and the national economic agenda. Gregory Mc Guire.
Good morning, all, and thanks so much for coming. Gregory Mc Guire is the name, as the chairman said. I want to speak to the question of refinery closure and national economic agenda, primarily because, to me, this event and this decision has to be rooted in an overall economic policy agenda, because indeed that is where the refinery was birthed. Sherwin would have covered some of the stuff that is in this presentation, so I'll just gloss over some of those slides, some of those earlier slides. But I'll begin by saying that the country entered the oil business in the 60s. That is the question of national ownership. When the multinationals who had determined to control the business, who were in control of the business then, determined to exit the country. It was also a time of great nationalism, and the rallying cry then was for ownership and control of the commanding heights of the economy. And basically, the state purchased a number of assets in order to save jobs. That was the case when BP left in 1968 and in came Trinidad Tesoro. That was the case as well when Shell gave up the ghost in 1974 and it became Trintoc and so on. Eventually Trintopec and Trintoc becoming Petrotrin in 1994. Now, we had lofty expectations of that nationalization agenda and that business of owning and controlling the commanding heights of the economy. It included, we expected increases in national income, we would save and expand employment. This was an important one, to build skill sets and to build technological capability. Of course, to earn foreign exchange and to be a catalyst for linkages within the domestic economy. All of those were touted as some of the benefits of having national ownership. Indeed, the policy objectives at the time included things like revenue maximization, rational operations that must be in the national interest, building technological capability, and ensuring that there's transfer of technology, and of course the economic diversification agenda. So that's the context in which Petrotrin and the whole nationalization effort was forged. What are some of the accomplishments? Well, Sherwin covered some of them. Petrotrin has provided high-paying jobs for both permanent and temporary people. Importantly, it has been a training base for many industry professionals who have since moved on to the multinationals. Some have moved on to have their own companies. Some are, in fact, owners of companies and so on. It has been a contributor, significant contributor at times to government revenue. The entire Petrotrin collection group is estimated to account for about 4 to 5% of GDP. It has at times been a net foreign exchange earner. We saw from Sherwin's data that it plays a major role in the community, upkeep of infrastructure, schools, as well as sponsorship of cultural and sporting activities. So it's a major thing. But it has not been all good news, of course. There has been significant capital injection from government over the years. And we've experienced historic low implementation rates and cost overruns on major capital projects. We know them well, which has resulted in heavy indebtedness of the company. A key factor is that there has been, over the last 20 years, changes in board and management at each and every change of the party in power. And I think that is a factor that has become extremely important in the state of Petrotrin today. there has emerged serious asset integrity issues. And of course, there's also the question of escalating manpower costs. These things have placed Petrotrin at a disadvantage compared with its other companies. And in fact, what this slide shows is the comparison between the manpower in Petrotrin as well as the manpower in other best-in-class organizations. And this is not to say that it is the manpower issues alone that Petrotrin has. So what is its current position? And Showing did show one slice of the financial data. And I will probably show a few others. First of all, what we show here is that as we saw in Showing's data over the last 3 years, there has been negative net income, negative operating income as well. The revenue as well has dipped, and one of the major reasons for that dip in revenue you're seeing there is in fact oil prices and the lower oil prices. So in 2017, as oil prices started picking up, you would see Petrotrin's the graphs beginning to pick up again. So if you plot revenue and net income, you will notice how the net income is also picking up in 2017 as a result of as oil prices improve. So in fact, this is the most interesting graph that I have here, which suggests to us that when oil prices are high, you would find that the net profit margin is above the line. But once oil prices begin to dip below $50 a barrel, what you find is that the net profit margin goes below the line. So the blue lines are net profit margin, and in some respects, high oil prices mask inefficiencies and mask the real state of the company. If oil prices were to remain high and above $50 and above $60 a barrel, then the company would be in a much better position. But we have no control over prices. We also have very little control over the debt burden the company now faces. Again, Showing was quite right that this debt was a result of decisions made to go into these large projects, which were meant, by the way, to improve the company's operations. So it is ironic that they are now the source of the difficulties that the company faces. Interestingly enough, even though it has made contributions to the government, there's a tax and royalty liability of $1.2 billion, bringing us the total debt burden of the company to about $12 billion DT. So the difficulties that we see here, of course, are really there's very little new things about it. In that it seems to me that certainly over the last 20 years or thereabouts, we've been seeking to have an improved refinery and a betterment in the refinery, a betterment in the life of the workers and so on in the refinery. So Vision 2020 recommendations talked about Trinidad and Tobago must create an optimal oil refining sector, which would yield the benefits that I mentioned earlier. But it did go on to say that capital-intensive and competitive nature of the refining business presents a strong case for recurring investments to keep the local refining business globally competitive. And private capital would, in fact, have to play a role in this process. So, still a little bit of the history. There was a very intensive and detailed study on the refinery operations in 2005. And that study presented 3 options. Very comprehensive study. Option 1 was the option of today. Discontinue refinery operations, which it was noted then will have an adverse economic and social impact on the country, and particularly in South Trinidad. 2, build a new refinery, a grassroots facility estimated then to cost $2.3 billion. Or 3, upgrade the current refinery, going to gasoline optimization and modernization to break up that bottom of the barrel fuel oil into more useful products. So that study recommended a JV partner was necessary for the long-term survival of the Point of View refinery. A JV partner was necessary because it would provide the capital necessary for upgrade. And secondly, the JV partner will give Petrotrin long-term financial stability. So the hope was then back in 2005 that the company will seek a joint venture, and the joint venture will help to refurbish the refinery, and the joint venture will bring better project management skills, and we'll be off and running. In the meantime, the global industry has been making considerable adjustments to the changing environment. What this slide shows is a series of closures, refinery closures, across the globe, in some areas much larger than others. But basically the message is, because you won't be able to see the details there, the message here is that across the globe, there's been several refinery closures. And one of the things that is noted, and this is a 2017 picture, about what's happening in the global refining industry. Second thing that has been happening is that here we have a situation where the biggest ones survive. And this slide has a series of consolidations across the globe which would have created new refining capacity, consolidation of the big owners into big owners purchasing smaller refineries to provide a change in the overall landscape. Locally as well, the MNCs here have been adjusting. BPTT has had 5 restructurings over the last 20 years. Each restructuring, a new bunch of people were laid off, given their packages to go home, and new people were hired as the company settled down. Shell has purchased BG with its own round of separation. Perenco has purchased TSP. And Shell, in fact, purchased Repsol even before they purchased BP. The point I'm making is that the global industry is in a state of flux. The global industry continues to move forward, and Trinidad and Tobago cannot ignore these changes. So the famous Lashley report, and many of you here and many people will know this, but those who don't know, the Lashley report had 2 major recommendations. One is that we should change the governance arrangements, meaning that the way we now appoint boards of directors and the way boards of directors have been subjected to changing every time the party in power changes, that needs to stop. That the board of directors should come from certain institutions, should be certain independent professionals, and there's a way in which that board the changing will ensure continuity across administrations. And secondly and importantly, breaking up the refinery into 3 units, refining and marketing, trimmer upstream, and land operations as well, E&P, the intent there was to provide a more focused management so that improvements could be had. The last report didn't deal explicitly, even though it mentioned in detail the debt problem and so on with the company, it didn't deal explicitly with how that should be addressed. So, because we only have 20 minutes, what are some of the impacts of this decision from a macroeconomic standpoint? Well, we're going to have a direct fall in GDP, I think, between 1.5 and 2% as a result of the fallout of the refinery. And then there's going to be an indirect impact as well, because as the refinery falls away and the service companies fall away with that job, so there's going to have that reverse multiplier effect, if you will, on employment and on output. The unemployment figure in the country is expected to, of course, increase. That's obvious. Foreign exchange, well, because Petrotrin spends such significant sums of money importing oil, we may actually end up in balance with respect to the foreign exchange, because now the exports, if we do have export markets, will be about 40,000 barrels a day, whereas the import of products will only be about 25,000 barrels a day. So there might be some balance there. On the trading end, that says nothing about the debt repayment end of the business. There's likely to be a general reduction of business activity in South Trinidad. I think that's pretty obvious. Something that has caused a lot of contention in the country is the business of what's going to happen to LPG and transportation fuel prices. The truth is that there should be no impact on it, and I could explain that a little bit later on. And there's going to be general slowdown in business activity, not only in South, but as well as the national economy. Now, very important is what's happening to key consumers. And there are three sets of consumers that are of interest to me and of interest, I suppose, to everybody. One is NP. And because it's national company against national company, NP could delay payments, pay late, pay in bulk, pay later, pay at the last minute. So it manages its cash flow from the way it manages its payment to Petrotrin and the way the government pays this NP. So there's going to be issues for NP to treat with. The other major issue is that NP now Petrotrin supplies NP with fuel, and therefore the question arises, who will be the importer? We are told that it's going to be Petrotrin. Well, if I were NP, I would say, well, why is Petrotrin importing fuel for me? I could do that on my own. And I don't necessarily need Petrotrin in this game anymore. So that is a policy decision that has to be taken. Significantly as well is the question of lake asphalt. Petrotrin supplies lake asphalt with bitumen. And bitumen is a significant component of lake asphalt's business and a significant contributor to lake asphalt's revenue. And so the questions arise, well, now again, who will import the bitumen? And what about supplies and cost of such imports? And it's a major question for lake asphalt that I haven't seen come up in the public domain at all. The third thing is, of course, is the CARICOM market. And I saw a newspaper report saying that certainly, I think it was Guyana, looking for supplies of fuel given the Petrotrin meltdown. And that is the case with all the consumers in the region. And potentially for Petrotrin, it may represent a loss of markets unless, of course, their trading business now seeks to buy product to on-sell to these countries. Because there are a number of traders out there. And is Petrotrin going to be a trader? We don't know. At least we don't know at this time. So what about the future? Well, my personal view is that this is not the end of the refining business in Trinidad and Tobago. If there's 70,000 barrels a day of oil produced here, then that's more than enough to have a modern, efficient refinery operating. And therefore, it bothers me that we're not hearing what's next with respect to the refinery. I go back to what I should say. I'm not believing what I'm hearing with respect to what next in the refinery, because I don't believe this is the end of the refining business in Trinidad. I go back to the initial days of the funding of this refinery, and one of the things that was argued at that time was obviously the more value added you made with the product is the more value that comes back to the country, and therefore so not to have a refinery is in fact to walk backwards. What not to have a refinery is to take us back to where we were. So the key thing obviously is to have a refinery, but have a refinery that is efficient and have a refinery that is competitive, whatever that takes, Given the state of the government finances and given the state of Petrotrin's own finances, I argue that private capital will now be required for this refinery business to continue. It simply can't continue with government business alone. So, I think there's two questions here. There's the what and there's the how. And I think a lot of the difficulty that we have with this decision is the how. I think a very strong case, convincing case has been made for what has been proposed, which is make drastic changes to the refinery operations. Too drastic for some people in terms of saying that it's going to be closed down, but I think the evidence before us suggests that tough action was required. And I go back to 2005, where the options were shut down, build a new refinery, upgrade. We chose to upgrade, and due to primarily to poor project management and poor management, that upgrade process failed. And therefore, we're back now to this point where similar options, I think, are before us. Shut down, upgrade, new refinery. My own bet is that there should be a new refinery, a newly configured refinery, and because you cannot be producing 70,000 barrels a day and not be doing the refining business. That doesn't fit in the policy directions of back in that day. It doesn't fit with the modern business environment either. My own view again is about the what and the how. So what is okay with me? The how is where a lot of the problems reside in my mind. And I think that there ought to be a collaborative approach to major decisions like this. And there are two elements of it for me. One is that such decisions should be informed, but should be subjected to greater public scrutiny. So is that the parliamentary debate, or is that more discussion? Indeed, one of the things that the decision has done is create this, that here you have hundreds of people listening to a discussion on Petrotrin. So the question that arises is, could this happen before, or is it as a society, we have to wait on a crisis to happen before we pay attention to it? And maybe that's the situation, but we need to change that. The second element of this how, to my mind, is that all major decisions of this nature, be it investments or divestments, should be supported by full social and economic cost-benefit analysis. And I'm including in here the highway to Point Fortin, I'm including in here the highway to Sandy Grande, I'm including in here the Beetham wastewater project of the last regime, all of which called for over $500 million in expenditure of the public purse. And indeed, the public, I think we would all benefit as a society if there is greater transparency and if full social cost and economic cost benefit analysis is done in some of these projects, on these projects. So I think that's it. Thank you so very much. My time is up. Just pull up Krishna's.
Thank you, Gregory. I should have told you that Gregory Mc Guire is also a director of the Trinidad, of the Lloyd Best Institute of the West Indies, as indeed am I. The next speaker, perhaps in the Southland, needs no introduction. Dr. Krishna Prasad has been an oil man since 1970, mainly in the upstream business, and he's going to come to talk to us about the prospects for Petrotrin's E&P business in the new quote-unquote dispensation. Dr. Prasad.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk not just about the prospects, but give you a little bit of history, tell you where we are today, and then talk about what I think the options are for tomorrow. So let's talk about yesterday. When I say yesterday, I mean the past. In the 1970s, Trinidad Tesoro, which was one of the two Petrotrin precursors, had lots of proven shallow, heavy oil onshore. We also had lots of exploration prospects. And I joined the company in May of 1970. We embarked at that time on a massive enhanced oil recovery program using steam. And we did no exploration for years. That proved very successful. Tesoro, in a short order, reached 10,000 barrels oil a day using steam. In fact, by 2010, other companies had joined in, and that had gone to 35,000 barrels oil per day at a time when we were producing about 150,000 barrels a day. So that means about a quarter of our oil was from enhanced oil recovery using steam. Now, let's come to today. Today, sorry, this is the wrong presentation. Today, Petrotrin has huge reserves of proven heavy oil offshore in Trinidad. Now, steam cannot work offshore, and it cannot work deep. It's limited to shallow. But good news is there's a huge resource of carbon dioxide, which is being wasted in Point Lisas. We vent about 2 billion cubic feet of CO2 every day from Point Lisas. And that's bad because it's contributing to global warming. So we have that as a resource. And even more good news is that carbon dioxide is ideal for heavy oil, shallow or deep, and it can work offshore. It actually can work in any oil at any depth, whether it's light, medium, or heavy. I had some slides in here which were fairly technical slides, which was asked to remove, so I will blow through them. But basically, what this shows is there are several methods of enhanced oil recovery, EOR, that can be used, but the heavy oil applications are focused in red. Thermal and the CO2 are best for heavy oil. And this has been found all over the world. Thermal is great, but we can't use it in the offshore. CO2 is being used now in many parts of the world. Currently, it's about 300,000 barrels oil a day of CO2 EOR, United States, Canada, and Turkey, mainly. There's several methods that you can use. I won't go into the detail. The one that I would recommend for the long term is CO2 flooding, which basically you have injector wells and you have producing wells. You inject CO2 into the injection wells and you produce the oil and CO2 and the gas and water from the production wells. And you have an option there that you can collect all the products. You can collect the gases that come out, separate the CO2 and re-inject it. In effect, what you are doing there is sequestering all the CO2. About 45% will come back out. You can compress it and put it back in. That's important because it means that we can do what we signed and said we were going to do in the Paris Accord, which is sequester the CO2 that we produce that's currently being vented from Point Lisas. So we can, in actual fact, kill two birds with one stone. So, tomorrow, Petrotrin, I suggest we do exactly what we started in 1970. Forget exploration for a while. We don't need exploration. Petrotrin has discovered, and in their fields, offshore and onshore, something like 8 billion barrels of oil in place, of which only 2 billion barrels or less has been produced. What that means is that there's another 2 to 3 billion barrels of oil that can be produced by enhanced oil recovery. Carbon dioxide is not the only method, but for the heavy oil offshore, it is the only method. So let's look at that resource. The Trinidad fields have produced about 800 million barrels, mostly all primary. Current Trinidad's production is only 20,000 barrels a day. We can look at East and North Soldado, which are heavy oil fields. East Soldado is one of the fields. It has 120 wells, 4 platforms, producing from 3 different horizons, from 1,000 to 8,000 feet. It's produced about over 100,000 barrels of oil, producing at less than 5,000 barrels a day now. We can produce another 100 million using CO2 EOR and at least 10,000 barrels per day incremental. We'd need about 40 to 50 million cubic foot of CO2. North Soldado is an even larger field. It's produced 250 million barrels of oil. It's currently doing about 10,000 barrels a day. It can produce another 250, probably higher, 15 to 20,000 barrels a day. And that's just 2 of their fields. Let's talk about the heavy oil. In 1963 or 64, somewhere in the early 60s, a North Marine 1 was drilled and found heavy oil. That North Marine block has 500 million barrels of heavy oil known to exist in the ground. To date, only 1 million barrels has ever been produced because there was no technology then to produce that heavy oil. These things are offset a little bit. 484, 498, and Jubilee fields are further to the west in the map. And together, they are about 1.5 billion barrels of heavy oil, basically untouched. The 484, 498 discovery, sometimes known as Central Soldado. I grieve to say that I used to be head of a Trinidad study team back in 79-80. I was the one who recommended this prospect to be drilled. We found the 1.2 billion barrels of oil. Today, it's all still sitting in the ground. But that's another story. Jubilee Field, 5 discoveries. They say 48 million barrels recoverable, probably about 250 million barrels oil in place, or more. North Marine, we know is about 500 million barrels. So we're looking at a potential of about 40,000 barrels a day of incremental oil. We would need about 200 million cubic feet of CO2 per day. That's all available from the ammonia plants in Point Lisas. And we can contribute to mitigating global warming by sequestering all of that CO2. The red line, let me see if I can, this red line here is a potential pipeline that can come from Point Lisas into the offshore fields. It can also touch on some of the onshore fields, most of which belong to Petrotrin, some of which don't. And that's another potential resource, as is, of course, Soldado main field, Southwest Soldado. Together, they have produced about 400 million barrels of oil. That oil is lighter, but there's no reason why CO2 cannot be used for that. Petrotrin also has huge landfills, as I mentioned earlier. So at the end of the day, let's do what we did back in 1970. It's not rocket science. Oil is there, just let's go produce it. We don't need to drill new wells. We don't need to drill, and I'm an exploration geologist, and I'm saying, we don't need to explore for oil. It's all there. Let's just do it. So, basically, I'm saying, let's look for the stars, not the mud. Dream big and grow brave. Go brave. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Look for the stars, not the mud. Dream big and go brave. Dr. Krishna Prasad in his own inimitable style. The next speaker needs no introduction. He's a national resource of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Terence Farrell.
Thanks very much, Michael, for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. Krishna's a geologist. I am an economist, and I apologize. We as economists have to understand the world as it is, not the world as we would like it to be. The closure, if it's going to be a closure of the refinery at Petrotrin, is obviously tragic as far as the economy of Trinidad and Tobago is concerned, and certainly and more particularly as far as the economy of South Trinidad is concerned. And as somebody pointed out to me in conversation over the last couple of days, oil and sugar are iconic industries for Trinidad and Tobago. When we think about Trinidad and Tobago historically, we think about we are the country of oil and sugar. Sugar is gone. One of the things that I pointed out, and I try to point out to people, is that, and I want to make a distinction between economics and political economy. That there are laws of economics, and that those laws are as inexorable as the tectonic forces that cause earthquakes. So anybody inside of his room who has a Nokia phone, hold it up please and turn it on. Nobody has a Nokia phone? But Nokia used to be, you have a one, so we have one person has a Nokia phone out of 200 people here. Nokia is dead as a phone company. It was the premier phone company. BlackBerry, anybody's a BlackBerry? Nobody's a BlackBerry. Netscape, when I first started to use the internet back in 1995, the browser was Netscape. Anybody has Netscape on their browser now? No. Products die. Industries die. And they don't die because people want them to die, you know. The people who invest capital in those businesses, the people who work in those businesses, want the businesses to continue forever. As my late brother used to say, nothing is given to you forever. Nothing is given to you forever. So whether we are producing buggy whips or Nokia phones or landlines, how many people have landlines in their homes now, right? Technological and economic progress changes economies. The Stone Age didn't end because of a lack of stones. And as Sheikh Yamani said, the oil age is not going to end because of a lack of oil. There are going to be plenty of oil and natural gas in the ground when the planet has stopped using fossil fuels to generate energy. When that's going to happen, we don't know. In my case, I think as far as oil is concerned, by the year 2030, high-cost producers like Trinidad and Tobago will be out of the crude oil business. And by the year 2050, natural gas is probably going to be terminal for high-cost producers. Solar, wind, tidal are coming. The Chinese are invested in renewable energy. The Chinese have taken an old coal field, turned it into a lake, and put solar panels on top of the lake to generate solar energy. The cost of solar energy is coming down rapidly. Now, these things may not happen in my lifetime, I'm 65, but there are young people in this audience where that is going to be their reality. And there is nothing that I could do or you could do to change these things. Because technological progress is happening. Can't change it. So Joseph Schumpeter, a famous economist back in the 1920s, talked about it. He talked about creative destruction. That technological progress destroys industries in a process of creativity, of making and creating new things. And we have to understand that jobs disappear. So if I used to make buggy whips because the mode of transportation was horse-drawn carriages, when motor cars came along, the buggy whip industry died as it had to, whether you made good buggy whips or not. The jobs disappeared. And that's one thing that I want to say, that one thing that we have done in this country over the last many years, since the 1980s, 70s, and 80s, is that we have government has invested in things in order to save jobs. That's political economy. That's not economics. Because a job is, for the employee, the person who has that job, the source of their income. It is what puts food on their table. It is what pays their mortgage. It's what allows them to have a decent standard of living. But what a job is really, it is something that produces value. If it does not produce value, there is no job. And this is one of the things that we need to understand. This is one of the things that is important for our politicians, the people who we elect to run our countries, for them to understand. So we saved the jobs in the sugar industry for 30 years. When I was a student at the University of the West Indies in the 1960s, we were then reading about articles about sugar, our life and death. People like Micah will remember that. In the 1960s, we knew that the sugar industry was terminal. We kept it going here for 30 years, currently 1975 limited. And the point is that as an economist, what we have to do is that we have to calculate the cost of doing that. There is a cost. You may not see the cost or understand the cost. Even the government, in terms of its budgeting, may not see and understand the cost. But the costs are there, and eventually the costs begin to pile up, and then they become inevitable. We can no longer, the society, the taxpayers can no longer bear those costs. That's economics. The political economy is different. The political economy has caused us, since the 1970s, to create here what we can describe as a rentier economy. We have an energy sector that is producing significant amount of tax revenues. They flow through the government, and the government takes those revenues and it distributes those revenues by employing people in the public service. So we have government is the largest single employer in the country. Across central government, across state enterprises and sanitary authorities, government of Trinidad and Tobago is the biggest employer in the country. The Tobago House of Assembly is the biggest employer on the island of Tobago. And how does that get sustained? It gets sustained because government is taking tax revenues from the sector that is producing it, which is the energy sector in the main, and using that through its wages paid to public servants, through the transfers and subsidies budget, and distributing that to the rest of society. Not that government shouldn't be involved doing that. Of course government should do that. Lloyd Best, in his models that he developed for us, talked about plantation economy, pure plantation economy modified, and plantation economy further modified. Plantation economy further modified is a model of the plantation economy with what he called active government. That is to say, a government which is using the resources and the tax revenues to be able to invest in capital expenditure, to invest in the growth of the economy going forward. What we have done, because of the politics of the place, is that we have taken those tax revenues by and large, and in the process of redistributing those revenues, we have farmed them out into consumption, not investment. And so that the government has, through political patronage, through corruption, I don't need to go through the stories of corruption that we've had in society. The state enterprises are a bed of corruption. You want to talk about live sport? You want to talk about EMBD? You want to talk about Palo Seco Agricultural Enterprises? NGC under the last administration was doing everything else except doing gas business and building all kinds of things all over the country that had nothing to do with the business of NGC. That's the political economy. And the point that we make as economists is simply this, that when you do that, when you expend resources and you waste resources like that, it does not come back, it is lost forever. And there is the opportunity cost. that we could have used those resources if we had used them productively, if we had used them for investment, the country would have been much further ahead than it is today. And I am tired, let me tell you, of comparing Trinidad and Tobago, which at independence in 1962 had a per capita income that was higher than that of Singapore. Singapore has no oil, no gas, no sugar. They're barely bigger than Tobago. And their per capita income today is 3 times that of Trinidad and Tobago. And the difference is what they have done in terms of policy. Our governments have not served us well. That is the truth. They have not. So, and all of that is also sustained by some of the points that I've been making recently about the culture that we have in the country. Because the culture, the government's political patronage, is sustained by us. It is sustained by the private sector, who loves the relationship that they have with the government because they get the contracts and they get all of those things because they don't have to work very hard for it. And I dare say the unions love it too. And I dare say the employees and so on, they love it too because they sit down in jobs where they don't have to work very hard, quite frankly. All right? So our governments are sustained by us, our professional classes in this country, let me say. Those are the men and women who, as professionals, go and sit on the boards of these state enterprises. They sit there. They draw their directors' salaries. And they are the ones who, at the end of the day, are responsible for the fiascos that we have had in Petrotrin with the ultra-low sulfur diesel project, with the gas optimization project, and so on. And those directors have sat down there and allowed those things to happen. These are professional people. So, my point is that the system that we are operating here, ladies and gentlemen, it is not working for us. The country has too high a level of poverty for a country that is supposed to have so much resource and so much potential. The country has too much and too high levels of income and wealth inequality for a country that has so much resource and so much potential. The country's productivity levels are too low for a country that has so much resource and so much potential. There is lack of innovation, a point that Mary King keeps harping on every opportunity she gets to write in the newspaper. No innovation is taking place in the country because there's no need for anybody to do any innovation. When you have this system of patronage and of rent-seeking that we operate in the country, why bother to innovate? Why bother to be competitive? So we're not doing ourselves well, and the sum total of that is what I have characterized as underachievement. We are an underachieving society. But let me say that this Petrotrin situation, like the Caroni situation of 2002, presents us yet again. God is indeed a Trinity, you know, right? Because God is everywhere and He speaks to us all the time if we listen, right? And He's presented us another opportunity. It looks like a crisis, it's looking bad. But this is an opportunity. One of the opportunities that we have, whether or not Krishna's things on ENP and CO2 and enhanced oil recovery work out, I don't know. Whether Gregory's suggestion of a new, small, efficient, privately run refinery works out, I don't know. But we do have an opportunity now to grasp and pursue renewables and energy efficiency in this country. Let us step back and focus on that industry and say, what can we do for Trinidad and Tobago to bring and to introduce renewables, to introduce solar energy, to use tidal power in the Columbus Channel, to use wind power to generate our electricity, to convert our transportation system in terms of how we use that. But it also presents opportunities for the individual worker from Petrotrin refinery who may be displaced. Because there is opportunity, we have to see the opportunities that there are for creating businesses. And government, let me tell you, has to stop this focus on these mega projects. Government is not interested in hearing anything unless it costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Because it sounds politically good, and because the bigger the project is, the bigger it is that people could siphon money off the side and take money off the side. What governments need to be doing is finding ways of activating entrepreneurship among the hundreds of young people that I have met in this country, who want to do things, who are anxious to do things, who don't need a lot of capital to do it. And that's what we need to be doing in this country, but we are not doing that. But this is an opportunity Petrotrin represents for us, for this country, an opportunity. It is a crisis, it is tragic, but it represents for this country an opportunity. I hope on this occasion, ladies and gentlemen, that we seize the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. I introduced him as a natural resource. He's both a natural resource and a national resource. The final speaker on the panel is the director of the Lloyd Best Institute, Sunati Maharaj, and she is coming, and you will forgive her in advance, she has a case of laryngitis. But she is coming to put the whole Petrotrin issue in some political perspective, which we cannot ever avoid when discussing these matters. Sunati Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Ooh, let's see how far I can go with this voice. But Terence has left this conversation at such an exciting point. This is the opening for examining a vision of a country that is replete with the capacity for individual wealth creation, shortening the inequality gap, and creating a sustainable model for development that does not depend on the foreign prices of a natural resource. We saw what happened with Caroni Limited. I am from central Trinidad. I saw the sugar estates be abandoned. I saw the low wages. I saw the politics being bought off by huge wage increases, but 114% of $2 is what? Right? So then along came the Point Lisas industrial estate, where the sugar workers' children became the welders and the technicians and bought time. But since Point Lisas, we have seen how the boom and busts have resulted in companies that shut down, leave the country, and leave the workers. So the model from the energy sector using oil and gas resources has failed because we have not taken that money to develop the rest of the economy that we will need when that either, as Terence is saying, the oil and gas doesn't have to run out. It just has to become its products and no longer in global demand. What happens? And that is the whole discussion of using offshore resources to develop onshore. This issue about Petrotrin I don't think it's about a refinery. I think it's about the burden of adjustment. There is an adjustment to be made, and the burden is falling completely on the workers. The points have been made about the negligence of boards. Governments, I beg to disagree. I don't think in 1985, that as the New York Times reported, that the government bought the refinery to save the jobs of workers. The government bought the refinery to save votes. And that's a different thing. Because if they were to save the jobs of workers, they would proceed to manage that in such a way that it would not happen today, what is going to happen. What people are rankling about is that all the people, a large number of the people who are responsible for the disaster that Petrotrin has become, have either gone or they have gone with the money. And why should this happen to the workers? Why are they the ones, and not just the workers, but all who depend on that trickle-down economy is what is going to collapse. And this is why this discussion is a real space right now. The Lloyd Best Institute entered this discussion at Petrotrin before this was announced about the closure of the refinery, when we realized that there seemed to be a complete impulsive way. There was a trajectory that this Petrotrin issue was going down as though it was not a national issue, as though it was simply a cabinet decision, a board implementation, and that these things, this resource, belong to the board and the people who have been voted into office. That it wasn't, that it all, the view was that from the government's perspective and the board's perspective, that the only counter voice and the only interest they had to deal with across the table was the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And we got involved in order to establish the point that Petrotrin, the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, is an important stakeholder, but not the only stakeholder. We are all stakeholders. And so we came to the discussion, and apart from the chairman and the President General, the chairman of Petrotrin, and Mr. Roger, we invited what we considered stakeholders: the mayor of San Fernando, the chairman of Sipara Regional Corporation, the business, other labor organizations, community representatives, and so on, to make an input into that conversation because it was a national issue. That I was tremendously disappointed in the way the company handled that discussion, in that they just dug in their heels and proceeded. And the government has proceeded with the audacity certain people have of thinking, that's a board, we've given the board to run their affairs, that's their business. Well, it's not their private company. People can do that. People who take the risks with their own money and set up their company, we cannot tell them what to do. We might not like the fact that they closed the company. They put their money on the line. These are people who are managing assets and resources on our behalf. And so the fact that we are at this point now is that I think what has happened, it has not been left just to the Oilfield Workers Trade Union to carry this issue from its perspective, but that informed voices, citizens, business people are coming forward. And that is the most exciting thing to happen in this country for a long, 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 long time. It is the responsibility of citizenship. It is the beginning of the birth of a nation, that if we do not build on this moment, that's why we are here again today, if we do not build on this moment to change the future behaviors of those who represent us and those who manage resources in our names, we would be right back here when the next confusion blows up. This country has put so much money into failed projects. We have $200 million in the Carney racetrack sitting down in the ground. The last thing that came out of that was the massive anaconda that the zoo took. Nobody wants to go there, it's covered up. I have been there. Big pools that were supposed to be for horses, $200 million in steel on the ground. We just close it and we're gone. Who is held accountable? And so the question is, today, is the Curep interchange another one? Is the Togo Highway another one? Is Sandals another one? We have already come through the highway to Point 14, all the projects in the past, but we can go right. And this is our history, going back to before independence. Remember the Cora Dam. This is the model of central power that after 56 years after independence, we have not created the conditions for people to take charge. And so it is our responsibility to use the space and force the space open. The point has been made by Michael in one of his columns that this is a debate that needed to have taken place before. It did not, but there is still time. Right? There is still time, and it ought not to be left up to the oil field workers' trade union. It must, if only for the principle of taking responsibility and holding those who represent us to account. It is negligence on our part when we do not do that. What is there to stop? I don't know about you, but I don't trust any board or any cabinet blindly. I do not think that it's okay for anybody to say when it comes to public resources that it's their job to do and they should just come and announce it to me. You need to come to me as a co-owner and present that plan, bring it to Parliament, right? And if the opposition wants to play games, we, the people outside, will have the chance through the media, through meetings, whatever. And you see what the opposition does, and not this opposition, every government. They put their claws into a popular issue and they ride it, right? But we also have to be more responsible members of the electorate. Almost every important decision, bad decision that has been taken by governments has never been in a manifesto. It's never discussed in a campaign. It comes after because we are in charge. So this now takes us to the case for constitution reform. You have to have, often people get confused by the word constitution reform. That sounds like something archaic. Governments cannot be the entities that take control of a constitution reform process. Every time a government does that, the whole point, why would a government that is living off the status quo want to change? Why would they want to? The challenge for us in constitutional reform is to rearrange and upend the power relationship between people and those who represent them. And so constitutional reform can only come from people. You have to say, what are the arrangements that I'm going to put in place to ensure that every cent of the public purse is spent properly, wisely, within an accountable framework. All of those things are going to lead us to the basis where things have to come. And people, there's a total attitude of disrespect of somebody having said, why do you want Petrotrin thing to go to Parliament? We could go into an interminable debate. You think the people could understand all these things? Really? Well, if we don't understand, truly we have been negligent. We prefer to close our eyes and go with the party of our race or whatever. But when we start to take, you have to plant the idea of responsibility and groom yourself to accept responsibility. All of that is going to lead us ultimately to the form of transformation that we needed to embark on when we took our independence. We have to transform the education system. Everybody getting a certification and no education. That's why they can fraudulently write up certificates, because they know you only want to see a certificate. Education, the Lloyd Best Institute runs something called Caribbean Yard Campus, because we understand that knowledge is found out there. Our people know, and those who know are not certified, and those who certify don't know. I am generalizing, right? But the simple points I want to leave here with is that this is not an opportunity. I feel for the workers, because I'm following Facebook and I have discovered people among you I have never known before. I don't know who Tony Bedesi is. I don't know Nicholas, people I don't know these names, and I see the pain and I can feel the fear. But this is the moment for us to push the space and force a discussion. One of the areas, and I'm going to wrap up now, all this money that Petrotrin has been given to social, under the rubric of corporate social responsibility, and NGC was used as a piggy bank for all kinds of causes. All of this money, if companies have that, it needs to go into an independent arts fund. Our people don't really, a lot of us don't want to be in the public service, twiddling our thumbs, shuffling paper. But why would we leave a secure job with pension and holidays and medical to take the risk of getting into a business, whether it's in the creative arts, whether you want to do a bakery, whether any of the things, our people want to go into those things, but the banks are not designed, the financial system is not designed for small entrepreneurs. Right now, I think the Minister of Finance, for example, he's talking about stabilizing. Why? Because the price of oil went up. The economy is not stable. There has been, all these audits have shut down the payments that have only affected the last person at the bottom who are not getting paid. The small and the smaller contractors, the big ones could tell the bank to hold on because they have a loan of 100 million and they ain't paying it and you can't just foreclose, and then what are you going to do all them tractors? The small person is the one who feels it. So we need, one point I disagree with Terence on is his reference to Singapore. The Caribbean culture is different from the culture of Singapore. Right? This is, and there's so much work actually that has been done in this field, and Terence has covered a lot of the work in his last book, We Like It So, and you all should try to buy it and try to read it. But so much work has gone on in the Caribbean from the, I don't know, I mean, there's a man called J.J. Thomas, and I could go back to him in the 1870s. So much work has gone on to try to understand us. What are the things that make us? And we have a deep, deep need for freedom. We don't like the idea. We will say to somebody, we need that job, and they say, we're going to, if you don't do so, we'll walk away from it. Or we will go home and figure we will sell something. There's something about the Caribbean personality because of our history. And there's also all the hostilities that were part of the divide and rule. The divide and rule official policy of the British government to keep us apart. And we have a lot of things, I can't go into that, but there are very real reasons. He talked about innovation. The point was made by Lloyd that the lack of innovation is not a problem of the blacks as people try to make it in the Caribbean. It was the planters who came, and when they tilled the soils and it was exhausted, do you think they went and innovated? They just moved to the next piece of land and they just exhaust that. And that has become rooted in our culture. So the work is there, it's done. To understand us, we now have to take that, know ourselves, and design a template. We have to create the opportunities. We may never be all big, but we want to be independent. And it is not enough. I don't know about you, but I was insulted when I keep hearing the Prime Minister talk about nobody's going to go home empty-handed. Does he not understand the joy of labor, the joy of work, right? That's what people want to be employed. They want to work. And if you can shift that, where's the impact assessment done on the society on Petrotrin, not just Petrotrin? Where are the solutions? You're not supposed to be going to Guyana now. You should have that plan before you decide to let go people and so on. You should say, this is the employment exchange. These are here are the skills, and we can match it to your needs, and all that had to be done before, right? So that is where this conversation needs to go, in my humble opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Suniti. If you all enjoyed that presentation by Suniti so much, then I invite you all to attend other forum put on by the Lloyd Best Institute. because it is all about independent thought and action and freedom. We come now to the question and answer part, and unfortunately part of my job is to put down some rules so that we don't fall into total chaos. There is a microphone there, and I will, if you put up your hands to ask questions, I will also allow comments as long as they are not dissertations. If you are given a dissertation, I will stop you. But I will designate the first three people, and you stand up in line at the microphone. Please identify your name, yourself, and also, if it is a question, to which of the panelists you wish to address that question. All right, we are open. Cherie.
Good morning. I want to thank the Lloyd Best Institute for this opportunity to express some of the public sentiments on this decision. Whether it be premature or not, we will get into that. My first question is, where is the transparency in this process? The government presented their plan, which is more or less based on financials. But when you look at a state enterprise, you really don't look at a net income. I am from the financial sector, and I will tell you most of the expenses in that net income bottom line is non-cash expenses, which we should back out if we're going to do a proper evaluation on the refinery. And the refinery, as it stands today, is in a profitable cash flow position. We have had several studies over the last 20 years in the refinery. None recommended closure of the refinery. All address inefficiency and restructuring. So, and I don't agree, and with Suniti, I have to really thank Terence and Suniti and Mr. Mc Guire for the foresight they had into this, because most of my questions were answered by you all. If we close the refinery, the debt remains. Who is going to finance the debt? If we keep the refinery going with a plan, I'm not saying as it is, it cannot exist as it is, we could pay the debt. And from a financial perspective, I could sit down with somebody and model that plan to show where the revenues will come to pay the debt. And Mr. Mc Guire talked about the ramifications, etc., on the national economy from this decision. Did we do a holistic social economic impact? We're not talking about only the employees. We're talking about the communities and country impact. And what it does to pension plans, what it does to NIS, what it does to taxes, what it does to, by extension. And I agree with Suniti, a man wants to work. And I think the retirement age in this country should go up to 65. I think people live longer too. But having said that, the impact of putting so many people on the bread market without any industries, creativity and innovation to take up that slack, we will have a mad population. St. Anne's can't hold all of them. Right? So, I mean, time may be against me, but I need to come to some other forums to express my thoughts on this poor decision. And I will say poor. The private enterprise bottom line cannot use in a state enterprise model, right? And let me just add before you cut me off. Upstream business at this time cannot take up the slack for the refinery. Refinery could do that on its own. Right? Well, I know time against me. I'll give the other speakers, but I still need to express some of my other views. Thank you.
Could you please a question to whom the question is addressed?
Okay, it's a combination of questions and statements. All right, my name is Christopher Jackman, and I am an employee of Petrotrin. All right, first, I need to address some comments that was put to the forum by Dr. Farrell. I myself am studying renewable energy at this point in time. I can say that at this point, it is not yet financially feasible for Trinidad and Tobago in a big way. I don't know if you would want us to comment on that. Also, I need to put some facts on the table. A lot of people are saying that we are in a transition. But the reality of the situation, and I challenge anyone to research it, is that there's an increase in demand for liquid fuels. On the market at present, there's an increase in the demand for liquid fuels. It is scheduled to plateau around the year 2040. But at present, there was an article on Reuters, you all can check it yourself. It is scheduled to increase by approximately 20%. So the decision to say that liquid fuels are on the decline is an incorrect statement. It is an incorrect statement. All right? We also have to keep in mind that we are seeing the potential in Guyana growing, and they are speaking to investing in refineries. We are seeing in the Virgin Islands that they are looking towards investing in reopening refineries, and we in Trinidad, we have a refinery and we're looking to close the refinery. All right? That cannot make any sense at all. So going forward, my main question is, can you confirm to me that the demand for liquid fuels is decreasing and that the demand for renewable energies is increasing? Thank you.
Okay, we'll see about the mic. Go ahead.
No, I'm an ex-Petrotrin employee, energy consultant. I just want to refer a little bit to the Lashley report, point out a couple of things there. On the E&P side, for instance, it talks about the reserves, Petrotrin of 170 million barrels a day, production in 2016 of 41,263. A decline, if it continues as is, to 32,000 barrels a day by 2021. However, with improved efficiencies, EOR techniques, etc., the expectation is that the production will go up to 63,297 barrels a day by 2021. And this is from the Lashley report. All right? They said on the E&P side, gross profit margins in 2010 of 79.6%, with net operating profit of 6.6%. On the R&M side, current refining capacity of 168,000 barrels a day, 2000 throughput of 158,351, declining to 145.85 in 2016. Local crude throughput declining 32% from 2007 to 29% in 2016. However, at the completion of the gasoline optimization program, distillate gasoline yields increased from 26.7% to 32.7%. Gas oil from 29 to around 20 to about 28.3% by 2017. Part of the problem with the declining throughput, 2013, 14, 15 really, was because of the downtime with the work that has been done on the gasoline optimization program. If you look at the figure 4,
where are you going with this, Winston?
Yeah, I'm showing that even the Lashley report has shown that the refinery profitability is increasing, with gross margins from 2015 about $5 per barrel to by 2021, after the completion of the URSD, to about 11-12%, which is a significant margin.
If you look at the EIA report, current EIA report, you look at the crack spread at the Gulf Coast refinery using LLS, Louisiana low speed. The margin there currently is about $9-10 per barrel. So yes, you have problems in the refinery. Yes, you have efficiency problems, etc. Even the Solomon report today have pointed at some positives in terms of 45% average performance and 5% above average, or 10% above other work habits. So there's not all negative. The problem is that they have not done a proper analysis and said, look, let's look at the refinery at different throughput levels, what are the costs involved, and what do we need to bring it in line to bring it to this level of profitability. It has not been done, and you take a decision to close the refinery.
Thank you. Just now.
Yeah, just let me respond, and I think Gregory also wants to weigh in on the question of renewables and the forecast for the demand for liquid fuels and so on. Quite frankly, any data that I have comes from sources like the BP Statistical Review, where they do their long-term forecast for global energy supply and demand across the world. The latest reports that I have looked at from that indicate that the demand for liquid fuels will continue to increase, but at a slower rate. The forecasts indicate that natural gas is going to become a larger proportion of energy consumption going forward. The forecasts indicate that renewables, solar, wind, will become an increasing proportion of energy production going forward. Those are what the forecasts coming out of BP, of Exxon, and so on indicate. One of the things that those projections have also told us is that everybody has been surprised because I think Gregory will correct me, about 50% of the demand for liquid fuels is in the transportation sector. And everybody has been surprised at the rapidity with which the development of electric vehicles and so on has been taking off globally. And in fact, countries like China, the European countries, have made policy decisions that that the fleets are going to be electrified. No more diesel, and eventually gasoline is going to go. So that's what I base that on. From the point of view of the producers of crude oil and its products, my simple economics tells me that the people who are going to go out of production first are the highest cost producers. The Saudis have a lifting cost of $9 or $10 a barrel. They will go out of production last. And the high-cost producers, the Venezuelans, the heavy oils, with all due respect to Krishna and so on, the high-cost producers, high lifting costs, are going to go out of production first. Gregory?
All right, good. My information is very much the same as Terry's. I just want to add two further things. One is be mindful of the data that you look at. Because if you look at current data, you may very well see a nice upswing in liquid fuels and a projection for maybe a next year or so that might be increasing. Now remember that might very well be a price effect, that in periods of low prices, people tend to switch back to liquid fuels. But the electronic car factor is real. Electric cars factor is real, and there's no turning back with it. The other factor is with respect to renewables and renewable energy. Until it is another crisis that we're going to face in this country going forward, because we talk about renewables and we're all excited about renewables because it's a sexy topic today. But at current energy prices in Trinidad and Tobago, at current electricity prices in Trinidad and Tobago, alternative energy and renewable energy is going to struggle to make economic projects. So if we want to move that way, understand that some adjustment will have to come with respect to electricity prices in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, hello. Hello, are you still interested? Yes. Okay. second, third. Next round.
Pleasant good day, everyone.
Name,
Comrades all.
name, please.
Am I being heard? Yes. Pleasant good morning, comrades all protocols observed. This morning,
Name, please.
My name is Crystal Bernard. I am a Petrotrin employee. I'm a Petrotrin temporary employee. This morning, I took this opportunity to voice a concern in the form of a question, but I beg that you permit me briefly to preface this question with some facts that need to be established after some misconceptions that have been put out in the public. Firstly, as I said, I'm a temporary Petrotrin employee. And I beg of the perpetrators of the fallacy that the average temporary employee works for $20,000 a month, state the truth and state the facts. But this morning I'll present it to you for myself. This is my payslip, all right? And I want the public to listen carefully as I read. Now, mind you, a permanent and a temporary worker in a particular field would work for the same salary. The difference is that a temporary employee would have breaks in service for weeks at a time that could run for up to 6 weeks or 2 months. So I may work for 6 weeks and be off for 6 weeks. So my payslip reads, net earnings, $1,845.45. Right? Weekly rate, $3,370.20. Taxable earnings, $69,927.12. Personal allowance, $74,870. Taxes paid, taxes I paid, $8,864. That's just my taxes, comrades. Basic pay, as I said, $3,370. National insurance, $138.10. Health surcharge, $8.25. Oil field workers trade union, $30. Scotiabank, Trinidad and Tobago, $1,000. That's my car payment. TechU Credit Union, $825. That's my loan payment for my house. And finally, net earnings, $1,845.45. This is my weekly earnings. So in essence, what I work for is really what my counterparts in the government offices work for if you calculate it. But the public was made to hate me and be jealous of me because someone said that this average clerk works for $20,000 a month. When in reality, my take home before my general expenses is about $4,000 or $5,000. And I have to still pay my light bill, school fee, face the grocery, buy a birthday gift. I'm coming to my question for each of my 4 children when that time comes. All right? I said all that to say there's a story within this Petrotrin story that is not being told. The story of the single mother, the story of the woman, the story of the sole breadwinner in her family, the story of the woman who was betrayed on that day in the middle of the back-to-school season when 1 week to go and being told you no longer have a job, have a wonderful life. That woman who had to go home to face 2 or 3, or in my case 4 beautiful children and not have a clue of what direction this company and this country was going in. So my question to everyone, because I really don't know who could answer the question, to everyone, the cabinet, prime minister, maybe someone on the panel could tell me, did you consider us? Did you consider me? Did you consider my children? Or is it that the casualties of this Petrotrin story are just numbers? My children are not numbers. Their names are Kyle Nelson, Kevin Nelson, Kalia Nelson, and Kyron Nelson. And we need answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, morning everyone. My name is Ricky Khan. I work at Trinidad Offshore for the past 38 years. We have been hearing all sorts of things, but we haven't heard, right? of the taxes that the government owes to Petrotrin, right, which is the subsidies. As of 2011, they owed us, well, Petrotrin, $7 billion. Nothing was mentioned about that. Neither you guys across there. Hey, you are talking to all you. Did you all ever take into any consideration, right, the taxes the government owed us? I hate doing all the presentation, bro. You understand? And for my calculation, we in 2018, so my calculation, we're looking like about 28 billion to us. In the past, we used to hear of the government writing off the debt. Past governments, we hear, whenever they in office, they hear the writing off Petrotrin debt. You understand? We are hearing nothing about that now. So I think probably with my calculation, we're about how much? $3 billion right now, eh? Oh, all right. So, you know,
thank you.
Get your points straight.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to the distinguished panel. Good morning to all the other invitees, and special good morning to my brothers and sisters from the OWTU today. Give yourself a round of applause to come out here today and represent our interests. My bad. My name is Callum Marshall. Proud oil field worker and even prouder union member. What I wanna, small statement before I ask my question. I notice we have a lot of quote-unquote experts who have a lot of opinions and they give the directions which they think we should go. And the sad thing to me is none of them are affected by the decisions. You all stand there, you all sit there and say, do this, close down. We're not going the right business. But you can stand from your position and say what you want and you're not affected. The government doing the same thing. They sit in Parliament, they're making decisions for us and they aren't affected. They say we need to make sacrifices and they are making none. I am asked to make it. But what hurts me the most, you are Mr. Terence Farrell. You would have gone to school probably 60s, 70s, 80s for free. On what? Oil and gas. Healthcare, oil and gas. You enjoyed it for many years. And now you're quite comfortable to sit back and say, let's go to renewable energies and forget oil and gas, because why? We have to move on. Nokia gone. But you use Nokia. You show no gratefulness to Nokia. Well, I am not Nokia. We are not Nokia. Right? Let me get to my question and don't waste the time. Two questions for the gentleman who spoke about privatization. Where's you or whoever the private investor would be benefiting from privatizing the oil and gas industry? This is my opinion, and you could tell me if I'm wrong afterwards, right? If a private investor takes over Petrotrin oil and gas, they may probably be able to run it and make, just use a loose figure, $100 from it. But it goes all to the private investor, leaves our shows and goes to build somebody else. I prefer that if we locally manage our company better, and we're not, maybe not as efficient as our private investor, let him make $50, but let the $50 stay to benefit Trinidad and Tobago. You understand? I'm not thinking about, I honestly have no love and no care for the 1% who want to build their families. I want to build Trinidad and Tobago. Alright? And you can answer afterward and tell Mr. Terence Farrell. Are you a person who's quite articulated, as the typical Trinidadian is, in pointing out the problems, or are you going to suggest real solutions? Why I say real solutions? Because you spoke about the transition to renewable energies. But let's be honest, trying to be going to have the facilities to just pick up now and stop oil and gas and go into solar power. I talking about now. We talking about now. We saying yes, fix Petrotrin. We saying yes, fix the oil and gas industry, but we cannot go to renewable energies right now. I am mortgage to pay next month. I am trying to mine next month. Is solar energy going to mine us and pay us next month? No. And in closing, Ms. Mirage, ma'am, thank you very, very, very much. On behalf of all the workers here and the whole of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you, ma'am. I hope that continue to be more people like you are honest and think about country first and not setting up on the intellectual pundits and saying what they want, right? Thank you. Good day, everybody.
My name is Joseph Roberts. I'm the president of the NPSA, one of 3 unions at Petrotrin. I want to congratulate the Lloyd Best Institute because I think the conversation needed to change a bit. This requires, I would say, to go so far, probably even a referendum. You see, the workers at Petrotrin has been vilified. And the narrative that is put out into the public, it is really saying that the employees of Petrotrin are really no damn good. They are there, they don't work, they don't perform. I'm not going to go back into the figures, but the figures speak for itself, and I think the oil industry and Petrotrin has contributed significantly to this economy, the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. I just wanted to go back. There was a slide that the first presenter made, right? Petrotrin and the board of directors started with speaking about mainly 2 payments, the 850 million US bullet payment that we spoke about, and a 750 million payment due in 2020 with regards to the amortized bond. I wonder if everybody knows that right now, that loan is now $250 million. How could a black hole pay 500 million US dollars? How? You tell me how a black hole could do that. Those are some of the things that the narrative that is going out there. They change the conversation. You would realize they stopped talking about the 750 million loan payment, and they're now talking about a 700 payment, which may be concerning our loans, some of the loans, short-term loans that we have. The other thing, too, we have to be mindful of, and this is a question to Dr. Farrell and maybe Mr. Mc Guire. We talk about impact. What really, and Cherie made the point, and it probably was glossed over, pension. What is the position and the impact of so many workers you want to send home on the pension plan? How is that going to be impacted? I think, and I'm really asking the panel, the 2 economists on the panel there, that can you give us an indication? Because from where I sit, I think there will be a significant impact. Because like it or not, the significant employees at Petrotrin really contribute a significant to the economy. What would be the impact and those instruments that are being held when, if that time, the drawdown takes place? So the next narrative, and I just want to be quick. The chairman, he speaks about there's no need for collaboration. This is just a sham. Look what took place with the OWT yesterday. No decency to come out and speak. And that is what we as the unions who have been meeting with them, they are not speaking to us. They came to tell us what they have. And they have been untruth. They have been untrue. They have not held true to their word. And we gave an open hands because we knew Petrotrin needed to change. We can't do business like that anymore. The next narrative they will talk about is that we're greedy because we are looking for compensation, right? So they spoke, 3 different people speak. The chairman speaks one thing, the Minister of Energy speaks another, and the Prime Minister speaks something else. 3 different narratives. Today, we don't know what is the basis of what they call full exit. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the panel want to take the issue of the pension plan? Okay, hold on.
Let me take the issue of the pension plan.
Briefly, please.
Yes.
Right.
We have approximately 1,400 people over 50 right now. If they send home that 1,400 people, the impact will be $1.5 billion of the funds will be withdrawn to pay their lump sums, and a further $14 million per month to pay those people pensioners. Right now, we're paying about 13 million. So 27 million will be drawn down from the pension funds at this point in time, 1.5 billion lump sum, and nothing going into the plan. So the plan may have to wind up going down the road. The trustees will advise us as we go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Testing. The people who are heard are not the people who make sense, but the people who make the most amount of noise.
Could we have your name, please?
Yeah, I'll get to that just 1 minute, please. So right now, the government is being heard because they are making a lot of noise. And I thank the Lloyd Best Institute for giving us the opportunity to make sense. Good morning, all. My name is Clyde Ramesa. I'm a refinery operator. I actually worked the night shift last night, the 11 to 7 shift, in that big cancerous refinery that the government says we need to cut off and excise and get rid of. I man the process units to keep fuel production going on a continuous basis. I myself and all other comrades, and I on my own behalf would like to thank all comrades in light of this very trying situation. Thank them for actually seeing nation first and working towards maintaining that energy security for now. I have some comments and maybe 1 or 2 questions that were commented. I will be as brief as I am allowed to be. With respect to the panel statements, Mr. Mc Guire and the Mr. Sherwin Long, I think it is, Transparency Institute, we're not asking certain questions. I understand you're getting input from BP, from the Ministry of Energy, from maybe the Energy Chamber, so on. And your analyses are being stated now. But what we're not looking at is the monetization of the E&P assets. Our local oil production, 40,000, 45,000 barrels per day, real production, not potential, not what is available in the future, as so on. We are not looking at the transfer price. We could go on the Google, we could go to the energy websites and look at a crude oil of comparable quality, and you could identify what a benchmark price would be for it. I am telling you that the price that you would see on the open market is way less than what refining and marketing currently pays E&P for. So when we look at the situation of Petrotrin as an integrated oil company, where E&P is profitable while R&M isn't, the question is asked, is R&M paying the market price for our indigenous crude production? The answer is no. So when E&P realizes a profit based on their indigenous crude production, it is not based on world market price, but based on a transfer price, which is not West Texas, but is a discount that is significantly less than what they would fetch on the open market. So for E&P to make a profit, R&M has to pay the bills. R&M is the refinery. So what you need to do, Mr. Farrell and Mr. Long, is to get the transfer prices and look at the transfer prices over the years. You don't have to take my words for it. I could actually give you the figures as stated in the company's financials right now. And you would have seen from since 1993 onwards to now, where the profits of Petrotrin were declared, and on most years the profits were declared on the E&P operations, and it was based on that same exact model. A transfer price determined by company policy to justify the E&P operations, and R&M converting and monetizing that crude oil into saleable products, sell it at a margin available to us, whether it be CARICOM, regional, extra-regional, collect the revenues, do the accounting, end up at a loss after we pay the bills to the E&P. We need to understand that, and the country needs to understand that. Our budget is based on the price of oil. We never talk about the refinery margins. Are we aware of what the refinery margins are and how how those refinery margins are captured and what was done from not 2005 with GOP, from phase 1 refinery upgrade, from 1993, 1994 onwards. The monies that were spent, the way that upgrade was financed, the government's input into that, contribution to that. Who footed the bills from since then? The market conditions that we were victims of, that we could have generated profits on based on company policy. I don't have a problem with R&M losing money so that the E&P can make money. Right? But we need to understand the mechanism under which R&M is deemed a failed asset or a failed entity. We are bearing the cost of that E&P operation.
Okay,
we are paying the bill for that. So all I am saying, Mr. Harris, is that the TNT ITI needs to plug that input when they look at transparency, because you're not being told that. Maybe you're not asking that question, but you need to ask that question. And Mr. Mc Guire, when you talk about optimization, shutdown, or grassroots, not optimization, upgrade. In 2018, it's not upgrade, it's optimization. And management failures are what are causing us to not optimize. $8 to $10 a barrel on 100,000 barrels a day import is a lot of US dollars that we are not earning based on management decision, political patronage, and overall mischief. So stop vilifying the workers. Let the refinery do what it is said to do and realize the returns, not for these workers, but for the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne Julian. I am here for two reasons. I am here to support the comrades of the OWTU, and I am here to bring a national position. I was an ex-worker of the defunct ArcelorMittal. I have been grilled and I have been skinned out there on the grill. I know the struggle. All right? When I heard this revelation by the Central Executive of closure of one of the entity of Petrotrin being the refinery operations, I was appalled. I was wondering what's next. Something doesn't smell right here. Now, I heard the speakers at the panel, and to me, there was a playing field that says from the panel that the refinery is going to be shut down. But there's another word out there that the refinery is going to be opened up to somebody else. It's going to be sold. Now, if it is sold to somebody else, and that person could see a profit, how come? And I'm going to refer now, and I took the painstaking time and task to read two reports. The Lashley report, did you guys read it? And the JSC inquiry report. Now, Chauvin would have alluded to the fact that this report made recommendations, like business entities and 3 business units, right? Having report to a central president and that kind of thing. But the report, I may have missed it, never spoke about closure. Now, we don't know the central executive interpretation of executing the recommendation of these 2 reports as to closure. Something doesn't smell right here. I am saying we're going to lose big time in closing a refinery, because the last 2 quarters of 2018 recorded Petrotrin, not the refinery operations, Petrotrin made a profit. If that is so, and the report clearly stated that management inefficiency was one of the major concerns coming out of these 2 reports, well then I think we should go with the recommendation of these 2 reports and get the refinery going again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sochan Laltu, I'm not affiliated with the oil sector. I'm actually a lecturer in sustainable development. I have 2 questions, one for Dr. Farrell and Mr. Mc Guire, and the other one for Dr. Krishna Prasad. The first one has to do with, I believe, good governance is where a decision has to be made in the best interest of all the people of a country nationally. It has to be done for short-term as well as long-term future planning. Inherent in this is actually transparency and the ability to actually make informed decisions. My recommendation as a member of the citizenry is that a parliamentary debate be actually convened to allow for full disclosure as to what is the basis for these kind of transformation is taking place. The second point, or the second question to Dr. Prasad, this is more curiosity on my part. You did allude to the possibility of heavy crude and the ability to utilize CO2 injections and so on. I know that it may be technologically possible. Certainly it will be environmentally friendly. I'm wondering with respect to cost comparisons and how will it be economically viable. And the second point to compound that is seeing that we have erratic fluctuations in supply of gas to the Point Lisa's estate. What do we do with the reliability of the supply of the CO2 to actually fuel that kind of injection technology? Just out of curiosity, do we have sizable potential natural gas deposits still that we can explore for the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Krishna?
CO2 EOR, I would say the answer is yes, simply because it is being done on a commercial basis in many places in North America right now. And the difference that we would have, the advantage that we would have, is that the cost of the CO2 would be much less. In the United States, the cost of extracting the CO2, they normally drill wells for CO2, is about $1 to $1.20 an MCF, which is a cost that we will not have. So our cost will be mainly transmission, compression, and transmission to the fields. And we should be looking at less than $2 an MCF. It's about 3 to 5 MCF per barrel, which is less than $10 a barrel. So it should work. With regard to, let me say something else. I am putting my money where my mouth is. I am an independent oil producer, and I am going to be starting again CO2 EOR in about 3 months. With regard to the gas potential, currently we're doing about 3.8 to 3.9 BCF of gas per day in the country. The demand potentially is about 4.2, so the shortfall has been shrinking. When the gas from the Dragon field comes on field and from Angeline, that should get us back up to well over 4.2 BCF a day. So in terms of short term, I think we should be okay for a while. In terms of gas potential, you asked a question about gas potential from the country. I think you should ask a wider question. What is the question of gas supply and a rate that we find commercially viable into the country? Because first of all, let me address the gas supply and the gas potential. BHP Billiton just discovered a huge gas field off the East Coast, 5 to 10 TCF. We use about a TCF and a half a year. In 4.2 BCF a day comes out to what, 1.2 BCF a year. So that's a 5 to 10 year supply almost. We have proven gas off the southeast coast, which we are trying to monetize, which is jointly held with Venezuela. Further off the east coast of Trinidad, and this is work that I have done, based on work that I have done, the potential for gas is somewhere above 50 TCF. We have now started to find that gas. But over and above that, Venezuela has huge resources of gas in the Dragon field area. There are 3 other fields. Grenada has just discovered a field in the same area, and potentially all of that gas can be imported into Trinidad and Tobago for our use, and the price, as I understand it, is potentially commercial. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on, there was a question related to the subsidy. The larger reports that you have on page 76, you can look there. based on the information report, the fuel subsidy has been as high as $3.8 billion in 2013. In September 2016, as the end of the fiscal year, the government was able to clear off all of its outstanding subsidy liabilities as at the end of August, because of course, the low energy prices and the increases in the price of gas since 2015. As at the end of February 2018, the government's fuel subsidy liability was TT 184 million. So I just wanted to give that update in terms of the subsidy liability.
Thank you. We are running out of time. The three people standing in line would be allowed to go, and after that we'll have to close off. It's almost 12:30. Are we? Yes, 12.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. I am Anthony Dobson, and I am a refinery employee also at Petrotrin. I would just like to address the issue regarding foreign exchange in the country right now. You know, the Minister of Finance would have been going on the national television indicating of our fallen reserves in the US currency. And I would just like to share some information regarding our US consumption at the refinery presently. Presently, we have a GE plant currently that is contracted by Petrotrin to supply brackish water to the refinery. And the numbers of the amount of money Petrotrin is paying towards that GE facility is approximately $475,000 US per month. And if you do the maths on that, and that they have been operational for the last 6 years, operation that should have been 6 months temporary operations, while Petrotrin would have upgraded their facilities. But up to date, that haven't taken place. So right now, the GE plant is presently going 6 years plus in operation at the refinery, operation that's supposed to be 6 months. And when you look up when you do the math and over the past 6 years, we are looking at over $22 billion TT that Petrotrin would have paid to GE facility. And I think the minister, if you're talking about, the Prime Minister would have gone on national television and spoke about Petrotrin is $25 billion. And that's the last 6 years alone, $22 billion. And if they wrap up operation, they're going back with everything, all the facilities, all the what they brought back in containers, and we'll be left to fend for ourselves in the refinery. And another issue regarding the billing at Petrotrin. Since ArcelorMittal would have no longer exists since 2015, ArcelorMittal was TNTech's biggest consumer of electricity. And seeing that ArcelorMittal no longer exists, Petrotrin becomes TNTech's biggest consumer. Our bill last month was 7 million TT for electricity at the Point of Perry refinery. And with the closure of this refinery, this is going to have a trickle-down effect to TNTech. Because when you look at TNTech operations, because the last Joint Select Committee, when TNTech would have appeared, they would have been in the red also. So we're looking at all this information, all these figures that we have before us. How is it that the government, in their prudence, are they going to make a decision to shut the refinery down? Is it in the best interest of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, or is it in the best interest of the 1%? Thanks very much.
Thank you. Hello? No. Yes, you. We can't take you. These were the last three. Go ahead.
A pleasant afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members at the head table, all of the audience, comrades all, good afternoon. My name is Ernesto Kiza. I am a logistics supervisor by profession in the procurement department. I've been a worker for the last 24 years in Petrotrin Trinma operations, and I'm currently the branch president of OWTU Trinma. Okay. I do not work for $45,000, never have, and probably never will. I don't work overtime as well, and in my life as a worker, I probably work overtime 5 times in my entire life. And that is because, as a worker, I've taken a principal position. If you cannot complete the work within the 8 hours and you cannot plan properly, you ought not to be paying a penalty of overtime. Good? Now, I work for $24,000 gross per month from 2012 to now. It's important that I say that because there's no secret. Good enough said. I have several questions. I'll limit it to 3. Dr. Farrell, being the head of the Economic Advisory Board, when the board was present, were you consulted in this decision to shut down the refinery and to send Petrotrin home, all the workers home? Let me say it again, Dr. Farrell. Being the chairman of the Economic Advisory Board, sir, former chairman, were you consulted by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet? Because he said in his statement that this decision was as a result of months of consultation with experts. You are indeed an eminent expert, sir. Were you consulted, Dr. Farrell, on the closure? And if you were, did you assist in advising that Petrotrin's refinery should close down and all 9,000 workers be sent home?
No,
that's my first question.
No, the answer is very quickly. The answer is no. The Economic Development Advisory Board, from which I resigned in January, has been closed down since March of this year. Okay? So.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Because you see, next question. Krishna Prasad and Associates. Mr. Prasad, sir. Dr. Prasad, you are a lease operator. Lease operators in Petrotrin, contrary to what was stated in Cabinet, don't have such a great track record, given the last set of fiasco. I wish to say to you, sir, your data for Trinidad is wrong. The East Field currently is doing 10,000 barrels, not 5,000. Yes? And where data is concerned, we work there, so we make it our business to find the data. I'm saying to you, sir, is this presentation a prelude because there is some expectation coming that we might be seeing you in Point Forte more, Mr. Prasad, that they're going to have some lucrative things down Trinidad? I'd like to know. We like to know. We want to know. That's it. That's that. And my last question. I'm going good for time, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's my last question.
Quickly.
My last question. In 2012, between 2012 and 2014, Southwest Soldado, which is one of the most lucrative development part of Petrotrin, not Trinidad, Petrotrin, where there is a light crude, where the potential, the immediate potential is 10,000 barrels of oil with good compression and everything, as evident with the shutdown of Block Station 25 in 1998, 99, somewhere around there. Yes? Are going good? Right. My question is, and I don't know if Dr. Farrell or Mr. Mc Guire, and Mr. Mc Guire is a South man, he's a Point Forte man. His brother used to work Trinidad. Yes? His brother was a Trinidad worker, a foreman, Prezi. We used to call him Prezi. So his family will be directly affected if indeed all the workers go home, and his brother, who is now a pensioner, he is going to feel the burden of not getting any pension if the pension plan is. So let me continue. No, listen. While everybody talk, I hear nobody stoops. I am talking now. Give me some respect. Thank you. I'm talking. Don't rush me. My question is, they built a production facility. It's now sitting down in Labitco. After that fiasco with Maritima, a company that don't exist, we awarded a 2-point-something billion contract to. And that contract and that company was a dummy company. It don't exist. A fella named Delgado. We don't know where he went or where he go. At this point in time, we can't find him. But the former chairman of Petrotrin, Mr. Gillett, when an investigative report was done, monies concerning a so-called account in LSE Plaza cannot be accounted for. And I'm not going to say whose account it went in. My question is, Southwest Soldado, that floating production facility that was done as a public-private partner, whatever it was done, they engaged a contractor to build it and so on. We have been telling the company, we don't care who owns it is. We really don't care. Why haven't we engaged that facility to get that product? Southwest is doing 2,000 now. Why? And I'm saying this to say, okay, sir, thank you. And I'm saying this to say, as I complete my presentation here, the OWTU is not just about workers. It's not about ponging gong and protest. You all are so, sometimes people get me so disturbed that after 81 years of developing, of contributing to the major development interest, including adult franchise, this union, that you demonize this union now. I'm simply saying, tomorrow, please God, we are going to launch the plan, the full plan, with all of the cost and everything, Eastern Credit Union Complex, La Jolla, at 9 a.m., the full plan, to rescue Petrotrin, inclusive, and the President General said it yesterday, we would have, you called us out and said you're making the refinery available, and the OWT will get the first preference. Yesterday, we came ready to explore those discussions with the board. That's what some of you naysayers inside there who say, why the union? No, the union wouldn't buy anything. But the union is saying, persons who have the national interest have contacted the union. And through the union, they are willing to explore. Listen to my words carefully, explore. So that as we talk about the national, as I close, this debate on Petrotrin, there is a demand. I thank the Lloyd Best Institute for doing human service, for having these types of forums. I really thank you. I thank you, Ms. Unity. I thank you. However, we need to escalate this to a perspective of a national debate, a proper national debate on the petroleum company of Trinidad and Tobago and its future. And while that takes place, all of the nonsense about shutdown and send home everyone, that needs to halt immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pleasant afternoon, all. And it's not 1,700 workers. It's 3,400 permanent workers, 2,000 casual workers, and 3,500 contract workers. Those figures, that's barely thing. And the subsidy, sir, as of July 2018, is 1.4 billion for Petrotrin and 484 million for Unipet. Please, I know with EIT, I saw you get the figures, but I'm giving you the update figures, sir. Okay? Thank you. Pleasant afternoon.
Thank you. I am exercising the prerogative of the chair to bump the lady with the baby up.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Penni George. I'm married to Daniel George, Mr. Daniel George. I feel like I have a cold right now. It's like everybody got a cold and it just spreading all over. And it hit home. So I have the cold too. The thing is, I have two daughters. We have two daughters. One is 6 and one is 4 that have seizures, bad seizures. Then we have our son. It hit home. My question is, would it have enough counselors to deal with this situation with families who have children that's sick and may not be able to get grants? That's my question today. And I thank so much for the OWTU members that come out and support. I come out with my children because it hit home. Everybody have a question. Everybody trying to find answers. Please find an answer for my children and my home too. And all the other children that have to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning to the chairperson. Good morning to the panel. Good morning to comrades all and all others in attendance. My question is to the gentleman from TTEITI. I basically took the time and read the 2016 brief report on your website, and under page 4 there was something called legal obstacles to transparency and accountability. Now, under your summary, the issue is that the Auditor General has never performed an independent audit of the revenue accounts of the Board of Inland Revenue because of denial of access, despite being mandated under the country's constitution to be allowed access. So in your recommendation, you have stated that the government should remove legal barriers to the Auditor General's audit of the Ministry of Finance, Inland Revenue Division revenue figures under international auditing standards. In addition, to discuss with the Auditor General the levels of assurance required in order for the government to report under international EITI standards, and any action items discussed should be incorporated in the AG's annual work plan. My question is, has the government been forthcoming to remove these barriers against the Auditor General to allow him to do his work, to maintain the transparency of his work, so that the general public will be able to know what really is going on?
Michael, should I answer one?
Go ahead.
Okay, yes. We looked into that issue. We had meetings with the Auditor General. There's an issue in the Income Tax Act that forbids the Board of Inland Revenue from sharing that data, despite the Auditor General being empowered by the Constitution. I think the solution to that issue is in the new TTRA legislation, where actually the Auditor General will have full access and will basically be, under that legislation, will be mandated to provide these audit reports annually to Parliament. So I think the new TTRA legislation deals with that issue.
Okay, thank you. Last question.
Yeah, good day. First of all, please understand that the panel is not your enemy. I get the impression that some of you think that the panel has brought about this situation. One thing I want to underline, oil the medium term or the long term, principally because of the fact that electrical energy cannot be stored as we store energy for oil. Imagine those compressors at BP. You think they could run on energy from alternative sources of energy? No way. So oil will definitely have to play a very important role. And every single one of you employees who are members of Petrotrin, members of the OWTU, of which I was also a member, your future is assured if you will buy the refining assets of Petrotrin, because of the fact that there is an already established market. And when you buy the refinery, tell the Prime Minister you're not paying, and establish a moratorium of all kinds of costs in terms of tax, in terms of the cost of the oil. If you all as a union do not embark upon buying it, somebody else will. And you cannot then say that you never had the opportunity to do it. Oil will always have a place in the systems of the world because we cannot go from solar, we cannot go from oil to solar like today for tomorrow. So there will always be the situation where oil has to be produced, oil has to be refined, and we will use the energy that is derived from oil. It is a fact that the economies in Europe, Japan, and China are really moving away from oil. But they will never replace oil because electrical energy cannot be stored. All these wind farms you all see and the sea generating facilities all are tied into the grid of the power stations or the grid, the national energy grid, because it cannot be stored. Just like electricity, you cannot store electricity. TNTech makes the electricity, transmits it through the power lines, and any alternative forms of energy will also have to be moved into the grid. So if you all could understand, if you all could conceive that buying the refinery is a good option for you all, then I think you all should do it as a union. It will take planning, it will take much energy, and it will take hard work. But in the end, it will be beneficial to you, your children, your great-grandchildren. Mr. Harris, I have read all your articles, some extremely critical and some very informative. Thank you.
Thank you. The forum on Petrotrin, the second forum staged by the Lloyd Best Institute of the West Indies. I want first of all to thank all our panelists for doing an excellent job. And I want to thank you, the members of the audience, for coming out to listen and to participate in this exceedingly important exercise. The debate has only now begun. And really, there are times, seminal moments in the life of countries in which every individual is forced to look at themselves and to define where their interests lie. I certainly hope that for the sake of Trinidad and Tobago, that this is such a moment and that we can have a definition of national interest that puts the country first and puts to rest now and forevermore the politics of racial division. But that is up to you, the citizens, because without your taking that responsibility to do that, it will not get done. So thank you for being here, and God bless you all.